All right, welcome to the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum Show, where we're doing our Thursday night shows. We're to interview some exciting, interesting people. And I have Dr. Karen Kramer. She helps women who have gone through major events, led them to the question of who am I? What do I want? And to help them take back their life and live it by design. Dr. Karen is also in book volume number 19 of the Change series, which I'm in volume 20. And her section in there is good grief, death, divorce, and other losses. And I read it. It was actually pretty good. You could apply it to a lot of things. It's really a lot of insight into how you handle grief, which I hope we will talk about that a little bit today. And this
Yeah.
interview is not your classic interview about agile or business per se. There are some tie-ins there, but we're going to look into what Dr. Karen would like to share with people and teams around the world about what she's doing, what she's up to, what's going on, and what we definitely will dive into some specific business stuff. And with that, Dr. Karen is a coach helping women and people take their life back again, so they can live with purpose, right? And with that, Dr. Karen, please tell us a little about yourself, stuff that may not be in your LinkedIn profile or something too, but tell us a little bit about your journey and anything that may not be in there.
Oh, I love that. Yes. So have been in the field of leadership development and coaching for over 30 years. So I've worked with many different people around the world, over tens of thousands of people around the world, from teenagers through C-suite executives. I've worked with people from the CIA. I've worked with nonprofits, government, NGOs, uh, little companies like Google, Nike, American Express, Boeing, General Motors, etc. So I've had a plethora of experience around the world, loved it. And so you tied in something that most people don't know. Well, I've actually been on stages for more than 50 years. So for those of you who are trying to figure it out, I'll be 55 a week after this recording. So let's set the stage there. Since the age of 4, Greg, I've actually been on stages. And obviously, at 4 years old, I wasn't standing up speaking and giving leadership presentations. I was actually a dancer way back when. So I started out with ballet, started into all different kinds of dancing, started into Polynesian dancing, so Hawaiian and Tahitian dancing when I was 9, and went professional when I was 14. So that's a little thing that you're not going to necessarily find in my LinkedIn profile. Is I was a professional dancer starting at the age of 14 for 24 years. I performed on stages doing Hawaiian and Tahitian, Fijian, Samoan, and all kinds of Polynesian dancing.
And that's funny you said that. I just interviewed Dr. Carla. She's a dance instructor. She has a little dancing group that she works with young people and that too. So it's funny. We got a connection with that there too. And I can ask you so many questions about what you described with what you just added. But I see you have a book, and it's actually in the background there. You have it on display. Healthy
Yeah,
Healthy Grief. Could you share it? Oh, you got a copy too. You got two copies, one in the background, one in the show, right? Very well
I do.
prepared. Um, so can you share something from your book, or maybe something that people in the business world might benefit from your book, and or just in general in their personal lives?
Yes. And I'm going to go back. You actually mentioned the chapter that I put in the change series in 19, and that was called Good Grief. That was actually when I was in the process of writing Healthy Grief. And I actually changed the title. But what you find in the chapter in the change series 19 on Good Grief is actually the start of the framework, which is the framework, the main framework for Healthy Grief. So Healthy Grief came out in November of, given this recording, November 30th of 2023, and then went put on Amazon February 7th of 2024, became Amazon bestseller on the first day, stayed number one in one category for 9 days, I believe, at this point in time. So I'm pleased with the following. And the premise behind Healthy Grief is that grief is more than just death and dying. It's in everyday life. So I chose the topic of grief instead of things like stress, trauma, coping, which it's related to, but I specifically chose not to use those terms because they've been overused. However, when I say the word grief, even if people think about death and dying, everybody is going to experience that at one way or another. We've had people in our life who are no longer, or us ourselves at some point in time. Yes, we're going to have fun talking about grief. At some point in time, we have an end to our life. However, we're sitting in a society, specifically in the United States, that is a grief avoidant society. Or as somebody mentioned yesterday to me, who's also an author and a coach in the field of grief, she said, yeah, we're a grief avoidance society swimming in the sea of grief. And in other words, it's all around us. So, what I did in Healthy Grief is look at expanding the definition. Really, with grief itself, it is when we have a significant emotional response to a significant loss, when what once was is no longer. And I do this physically because I'm thinking about a book. We have the various different chapters in our life, right? We can think about it from school seasons to different relationships to different jobs, however we think about the seasons in our life. And even when we think about school, jobs, relationships, and things, when those end, we can also experience a grief, i.e., a loss. It is when we have a specific loss about something, which can also even be a loss of hopes and dreams. So when we are closing a chapter of a loss, let's say even whether it's the passing of a loved one, the closing of a relationship due to a breakup or divorce, or being let go or leaving a career, just using those three examples, we don't automatically just immediately happily jump right into the next chapter in our life. There usually is that transition between the closing of a chapter before we fully step into that next chapter in our life. And in the process of that, how do we do that healthfully? Hence the title, health, Healthy Grief, in the process of it. And it really started, Greg, with some clients that I had here a year ago, that as I was working with them, doing a lot of subconscious and unconscious work. So, part of my background is I am master practitioner certified in neuro linguistics programming, hypnotherapy, as well as neuroplasticity, timeline therapy, etc. All of this is getting into what's underneath our subconscious and unconscious mind. So when we experience this thing called grief, a loss, the way in which we act and react to that loss has much more to do with what is at the subconscious or unconscious level. What are those past traumas, those triggers, those limiting beliefs, those significant emotional events that we have had in the past that may not necessarily have been processed? So we get this loss event, the passing of a loved one, or we go through a divorce, and all of a sudden we're reacting to what it is. We're reacting out of what's underneath that at the subconscious or unconscious level. And what I was finding with my clients as I was helping them unearth and release a lot of that was going on at the subconscious and unconscious level, that their bodies were coming back to balance. I had a client who had significant ovarian cysts, so significant that she had to go in for surgery. And she had mentioned that when we started doing the work. When I followed up with her a month later, she kept on saying the doctor, the surgeon, and I were so surprised that those cysts were not there when she went in for surgery. Well, I know energetically and in this body of work, tying in the mind body, that cysts are pockets of sadness. We had just released a lot of the depression she had around going through her divorce. So when she released that energy, it allowed her body to come back to balance, i.e., heal. And right after that, I worked with another woman who had come to me who had just been diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer. A lot of what we released was the guilt she was carrying around not being able to then save her husband who had committed suicide 5 years before. And in her case, also, it went back to releasing a sexual molestation that happened when she was 6 years old. Again, when we're releasing things, it helps our body come back to balance. Again, emphasizing healthy grief. It's not just the loss we're going through, it's how do we do it healthfully? And how do we, the subtitle there, Greg, is normalizing and navigating loss in a culture of toxic positivity.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and oh, I got lots of questions. I could probably ask you a million of them. But one of the things, I guess, is it also about it's okay to grieve a little bit,
Yes,
and let it happen, let it come out, and they hold it back in, and then that causes all this anxiety.
definitely.
And
Mhm.
similar into the world of business world, making mistakes. One of the things I have to coach people through it's okay to make a mistake. Don't hold it in. Let it go. Forgive yourself, and that's one of the things I do in my masterminds. I actually tell them part of the rules in the mastermind is forgive yourself and forgive others because you're going to make mistakes. And I try to
Yeah,
make that a team norm in my groups. But is that
good.
also something you could apply to making mistakes as well? Is it similar?
Definitely. So, what's coming to mind for me is if I, for example, I'll take that on. If I have a belief that it is not safe to make mistakes, okay, so we're getting to what's underneath it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I have a feeling it's not safe, and it could be maybe when I was younger, let's just say, so somewhere under the age of 7 and 10, that's before that critical faculty is formed between our subconscious and unconscious mind. So basically, we're taking in things uncritically and making beliefs about ourselves and the world. So maybe I had a teacher that was always came down on me like, Karen, you're wrong, you did that math problem again wrong, what's wrong with you? Like maybe I took that on and I said, okay, it's not safe, psychological safety, it's not safe to make mistakes. Well, what's the only thing you can do, Greg, to not make mistakes? Not do anything,
It's true.
right? So then what leads me as a little like 7-year-old to say it's not safe to make mistakes. Therefore, I'm going to do everything safe. I'm only going to take on those classes, those projects, the games that are safe for me because it's not safe for me to make mistakes. Well, then I carry that into my life and I'm then not going for those jobs. I'm not advancing in those careers. Anytime a relationship starts to go south, I may back out of it. Whatever, it'll start to show up in all areas of our life because I have this little 7-year-old belief that at that subconscious, unconscious life that it's not safe to make mistakes, i.e., the only way not to make mistakes is to not to do anything that would I would fail at.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I totally agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. I see it all the time. Um, now you mentioned that kind of worrying about stuff and growing. Right now in the agile community, there is a lot of talk about corporate downsizing. We as agile coach scrum masters, it's like the post of the day for LinkedIn, right? And you have had to deal with your own personal corporate downsizing and various personal and career life changes. Is there any tips or advice you want to share from your book, your experiences, to help people in the journey, especially when change happens, right? And we all know it's change does happen regular. But if there's anything you could share from your experience, corporate downsizing, your personal changes, that might be useful for our listeners and watchers.
Yes, it would be. And there's a couple of different images that come to mind. So, in working with the Center for Creative Leadership, that's what I started with over 30 years ago. There's a number of times that we were called in to work with teams, work with the senior executive teams, or even with the groups when they were going through mergers or downsizes or right sizes, however you refer to it. And given the fact that there was a lot that was going on in the 90s, we know about things that happened, say in 2008, being called into that, a lot of shifts that were going on. And I remember leading a leadership team through some. work, and I'm trying to remember whether it was Boeing or not. So don't quote me. I know I did a lot of work with Boeing. There was a period of time I'm working with these senior team, and there was 26 individuals who were on this 5-day program. On Wednesday, in the middle of that 5-day leadership program, one of them got a fax. So take it back. This was, I think, the late 90s at this point in time. They got a fax that they had gone through a reorganization, and the fax showed the org chart. Well, what the organization did is they knew this was going on, and that they had planned to send the leadership team to us to work with. And no, so what happened is they got the facts and they were trying to figure out the org chart to see if they literally were on it, which the organization did do a good job. They did. Every person that was in that leadership program was on the org chart, but they were placed in a different position. So all of a sudden we're sitting 5-day program, Monday through Friday. The morning of Wednesday, we had this whole plan of things that were going on, but obviously you're sitting in the middle of chaos. This is like, we can't just go ahead and plan for the script of what's going on that day until we acknowledge the emotions that these individuals were having at that point in time. Which, by the way, even when I say that, I was leading a 5-day leadership program during the work of 9/11. So that Tuesday morning, we ended up doing the same thing with the 19 individuals that we had in that program. So when you're going through various different right size, downsize, very first thing is acknowledging the emotions that individuals are going through, which it's interesting you bring this up, Greg, because in healthy grief, there are two frameworks that I use as the foundation to the OWN. So there is a 5-stage healthy grief framework that I have in this book. And the foundation to it, I actually start off with two of the frameworks that I actually used in the corporate world. One of them comes from Bridger's model. So the change model, looking at and it's a basic framework from the ending of something we knew to be true, the neutral zone, and the beginning of whatever that new stage is. And I'm doing it this way because he talks about it in a U shape. And it literally is, and I mentioned it earlier, that book analogy is the way in which I look at it. It's that closing the chapter of something we knew to be true, which could be things like, we're merging. So what was it like before the merger, or before I had this position, or before that change happened? The neutral zone is in the process of moving from one chapter to the other, and the new is then fully stepping into that next chapter. And so what you're finding is working with individuals who are holding on so strongly to what they knew to be true. It's like almost, I'm thinking about it like Tarzan swinging in the jungle from one vine to the other. It's like Tarzan would not be able to swing and go to the other vine, right? If he was holding so tightly onto that original vine because he was afraid of change. And that is exactly what Bridger's model is about, is just acknowledging where people are as they're holding so tightly to the old way of doing something. And also acknowledging in that neutral zone when we're stepping in, when we've let go and said, okay, I accept that we're going through change. What happens in that middle zone is you have heightened anxiety, right? Because you don't know what's going on. There's a lot of chaos. So heightened anxiety and depressed. You're also reducing the productivity and the motivation that's going on. So as an organization or as a team, anyone in an organization who doesn't acknowledge that these are the various different flows of somebody to happen. Like you're like, why are you not getting the productivity that you did before? No, you're in the middle of change. We're in the middle of chaos. We're in the middle of uncertainty. Just acknowledge where we are right now. So anybody who's going through that process, one of the key things is to, one, acknowledge the various different emotions that are going on. Communicate, and communicate is the biggest thing from a leadership perspective. Even to say, hey, we don't have all the information right now. And we want you to know we don't have the information right now, even to communicate that. Because if somebody's sitting back and going through that and not receiving any communication from a leader, from the organization, they're going to start making up all different kinds of stories. So the biggest piece of advice going through that is communicate, 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 communicate in different ways, in written, in visual, posters, having Zoom calls, meetings, whatever it is. So it allows the people who are going through this chaos and uncertainty to at least tap in and find what's going on and be able to ask their questions. So that's the biggest advice there, Greg.
Well, that was good. And one of the things I try to coach people on in the career and agile world is don't wait until, like, if you get laid off, then take a certification class. Do it while you're in. Take care of yourself a little bit, and you may. I mean, people don't do anything for themselves, and then like, oh, I never. I'm like, you're not listening. I'm telling you this every day. And one of the things I really want to stress in this now, hopefully it won't happen to you or I, or we won't be in a grief situation. But as coaches, as what we call Scrum Masters in our teams, who are agile coaches or coaches for their teams, they may have people on their team that experience it. And I really would like to recommend just getting a copy of your book and reading through it to give you a sense. So if something happens to you, you can recognize your emotion, right? So that you yourself, okay, I'm in an emotional state. Okay, I observed this. Let me get out of that emotional
Yes.
state, right?
And thank you, Greg. Because the other, I mentioned there were two models that I took from the corporate world into
Mm-hmm.
healthy grief. And I just shared with you around the Bridgers model of change that I've taught in here. There's another one that is commonly used specific around emotion. So that's why I brought it up to support you. And it's called the Sarah model, SARAH, around emotion. So let me backtrack. When I mention grief and 5 stages, usually people say, oh, yeah, the 5 stages of grief from Kubler-Ross. So, and then I ask the question, okay, great. Can you rattle off really quickly Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief? Which usually people can mention some of her stages, can't mention all of it, or can't mention in order unless they're in the world of therapy, psychology, etc. So in healthy grief, I actually bring that forward for a purpose and say the framework that's in here is one that is easy to remember, easy to process, easy to use with any form of grief and any person from say two, somebody who understands language, to 90 or more. And one of the things under the emotion is around the Sarah model. So thinking about the emotions that one may go through. And again, this is something, the Sarah model is something that's commonly used in corporate world, in leadership training. And it's SARAH. Again, that's U shape. And I also tie it into, I map it along with Bridger's model. So the first S is shock. Usually when we get the news, right? Okay, now we're going to be merging. Now it's a downsize. Now we have a new team member, or grandma has passed away, announcement of a divorce, the ending of a relationship, anything like that. It usually is like the shock. Like, what do you mean? When I was going through my research and as well as working with my clients, they also described it as numb. It's like, I don't know what's happening. So the first stage is just a shock as to what's going on. And again, in my book, I describe other emotions related to that. And the next one, A, is anger. They may be angry about that. What do you mean that I'm being let go? What do you mean we're merging? What does it mean for my job or all the time that I put into this organization? Then it may end up going into R, which could be that resistance. And I've also, when I've shared this, other R statements like hit rock bottom. Like think of it U shape.
Yeah.
So just hit rock bottom, whatever you want to describe there. Rage is another R word. And then starting to come out of the emotions, the next A is more about acceptance, that openness. Like, okay, I'm going through this process. I may not necessarily like it, that I accept that at this point in time, we're going through that process, that change. And then H, so Sarah with an H at the end, can be that help, that hope, that healing that comes from going through the process, or like I say, where you're fully stepping into and accepting that next chapter in your life. So that's another way that I've used both with corporate executives. I've used it with teenagers. I've used it with my clients in all stages because it's easy to remember the SARAH, Sarah model for going through emotions.
And the way you described that, I just recently talked about someone who got their year-end review, and they went through that whole model. Just when we were having a conversation, I kind of just naturally, as a coach, just walked them through it, let them do their thing, and where they want to be, and again, healthy grief, whatever it could be really crazy. It could be just that little bit like, why did I get that? I didn't expect, and really hate this job because I don't know why they gave it, and you get the whole level series. So I love that, and I appreciate your timing's great. I'll have to get the person the book, get them a copy. Or did you say, hey, go look at the Sarah model? You just did it. So I appreciate all that feedback that you just gave. Now I'm going to go into a little thing because you coach, you're a mentor. Give us some thoughts on master classes, masterminds, and deep dive 101s that you do, because I know you provide them as part of your services. What might be people seeking with different levels of those kind of services as you provide them?
Yeah. So the easiest way for me to bucket those is thinking of it in three different buckets. Do I have a client who's coming to me that either due to their readiness or their financial readiness, it can also be, so
Mm-hmm.
mental readiness, financial readiness, or also just where they are in their life, that they want something that is a DIY. So just give me something, hint, a book. That's another reason.
Mm-hmm.
This is a textbook. It is a 2 pound, 408 page of me just downloading as much as I can from a DIY perspective. Like, great, you want a framework, you want 30 grief survival case studies that are in here for inspiration, you want some background, you want some quick resources. Great, this is a DIY process. The next phase is more of those that are like, great, but what I was finding is I'm in the middle of an overwhelm from going through a grief. The last thing I want to do in the middle of grief is read a 2 pound, 408 page book. So great. So the next pound, which by the way, and you mentioned this, what I encourage people to do is if they know of somebody who's going through grief, and there actually are corporate stories that are in here, for example. So there are 7 categories of the 30 grief survival case stories, from death of a loved one to intimate relationships, divorce and breakups, um, other relationships, so family estrangements, friendships, maternity losses, career losses, transitions, identity crisis, so becoming an empty nester to a retiree, as an example. And the seventh category is around trilogy, so a number of 3 different grief survivals that happened all at the same time. So those are broken up in those categories. So what I say to people is become familiar with the book, and when going through, like if it's a corporate one, hey, so and so, go to the section on career, look at a story, find a story that is most like what you are going through. Then for each of those stories, so it kind of gives them a hope. You're not
Mm-hmm.
alone. There are other people out there who have similar stories that are out there. They may connect to the story itself, they may connect to the person, whatever it is about the story. Connect there first, and then look at my review of the story, because what I do with the review of each of those stories is I layer in the framework. 5 stage framework that I have in here. So then it gives a reader an idea of like, oh, so that's what they were thinking, feeling, how they acted upon it, what support they needed, and what the future vision looked like for them. Oh, I get it. Now, what's this framework about? So that's a great way to back into this book rather than sitting down and trying to read it from page 1 on. So resource wise, I know I went on to that. Greg, did I answer your question or did I just continue on to
The,
something
the
else?
the only other thing would be like if you did a 101 where you got the meetup group or the mastermind where you have a group of people maybe,
Yeah.
and then the 101 kind of thing.
Thank you, because I know I trailed off on that. So thinking about it into a stage of a DIY, so do it yourself, do with process, which is where master classes and masterminds come in, and or a done for you. So a done for you, like if I have clients who are coming to me and saying, okay, Dr. Karen, I just have this going on. I don't want to wait. I've been through therapy for the last 2 years. I don't want to go through that process again. I need to get back in my life now and start working with it. That's really like a done for you in my case, as somebody who does more what I call breakthrough work. And that's more of the one-on-one in-depth work where clients usually fly to me and spend 3 days with me to get 98 to 99% of the work done. And then I just follow them for 3 months. So think of a book as a do it yourself, and the more one-on-one work is the done for you in a way. So what you're talking about, Greg, is more the do with a masterclass mastermind type of concepts. I'm actually at the time of this recording launching into a masterclass, which is more of how can I use the context around healthy grief for the people who are like, Karen, I just don't want to read a book. I want somebody who can be along with me in the process, but they're not ready, whether it's mentally ready or financially ready to do the deep dive with me. And they just want hand holding. So from a masterclass perspective, that's great because then you get to verbalize a lot of the content that's in here. You get to answer questions. I know in my case, even though this book came out about 6 months ago, I'm already in the process of doing the second version of it, a second version, because I've been doing so much more interviews like this, Greg, and sharing. So I get an opportunity to share more content that's not even in the book. So masterclass is a way for me to share information with them, answer their questions, and add in additional content that may not necessarily be in the book. The master class, or I should say the mastermind, and I also do retreats as well, is it allows me then to carry on. So I do have a master class that goes on beyond. So for me, it's the book, DIY, the master class to give them more hands-on, and then the mastermind where we actually get to support each other around this going forward. So I have a group then is, for example, women after divorce. So when I come to the mastermind, I narrow it down by niche, like what type of grief. For example, I wouldn't want to put the woman who's grieving over becoming an empty nester with the mother who just lost her son due to death by suicide. Completely different. And also, I don't want them to compare their types of grief. So I have a mastermind for women who are going through, in this case, divorce, or a mastermind for those ones who have lost a loved one. So we can support each other. Because even once you're going through the process, it's not like grief is like a one and done. Come on, right? It's like I just came across the deathversary, or I came across my old anniversary, and I'm starting to have those emotions come up again. Or post divorce, I'm starting to get back into a new relationship again, and I'm now fumbling over how to do. So the mastermind itself allows more of that support post going through the initial stages, in my case, of grief. Does that
Well,
help,
yeah,
Greg?
that helps because I put on a mastermind also, and I look at it as it's not just me talking, right? They hear other people, so it's not just the expert in the field, but other people who are doing it in the same location you are, time and that grief maybe. Like you, I love the way you set it up with the different areas and don't kind of commingle because it is different, but it helps them see it from a different perspective as well, and they can chat with each other and talk as if they need additional help and things get generated. That's the whole idea behind the mastermind. So that's awesome. And I appreciate your feedback on that for people to get an idea of what the different levels are of coaching and mentoring. Now, any suggestion you have or advice to women out there, as a womanpreneur, right? Entrepreneur, womanpreneur, and a mother who's successfully, raised 5 kids, as you say, and blended family, and you understand juggling life's priorities, maintain that semblance of sanity. Any advice can you give to career-minded women who are go in the field, coming back maybe in the field, like, maybe they were in the software development, maybe they were in the corporate world, took a break, come back, or anybody, maybe they decided I need to take a break from without family and stuff, and then come back. Any thoughts on how they maintain their sanity?
Yes. So for the womanpreneur that's out there in any of the stages, as Greg just mentioned, you can do it all and you can't do it all at once. So I say that because I know many of us, if you are like me as a womanpreneur thinking, yeah, I can handle it all. I can be the mom. I can put in 100% at work, 100% with my kids, 100% with my partner. Maybe like me, who is a sandwich generation, who is caring for elderly parents as well as children. I can do it all. I can put on that super cape, say, great, take that cape off every once in a while. We are wonderful women, wonderful individuals. And if we try to put in 100% in all areas of our life, we can quickly burn ourselves out. So one of the biggest advice that I have to women, if you can relate to that in any story, is pick three. And I got this from a book that actually is called Pick Three. Randy Zuckerberg, and yes, the Facebook Zuckerberg, this is his sister, who wrote a book called Pick Three. And I love the concept. And she's the one who said, you can do it all, you just can't do it all at once. Is in the day when I actually have my day, which I do here, I'm giving away some of my secrets. I love this. Is I have it's called a best self journal, but it's my journal that I have each day. And yes, I do have the electronic calendars and things like that. It's my way of saying, okay, Karen, today, what is it that I'm focusing on today? What are the pick three? What are the three main areas that I am focusing on today? Now, it could be things like marketing, because I'm doing the podcast, right? And as I mentioned, I got 4 different interviews today. So today is interview loaded, right? So marketing or interviews is the main thing. And maybe I am, which I did this morning, I'm skipping my workout today because that wasn't one of the 3 things. Like I couldn't do everything. I couldn't work out and I couldn't start interviews and working with clients all on the same day. So interviews is one of my 3 things. Working with my clients today is one of my 3 things. And then I also have an event tonight that I am doing with my son. So that's a family oriented thing. So client, marketing, family, done. Those are the 3 main things that I have today. And workout maybe put on my schedule again tomorrow because I'm not having as many things. So rather than thinking, oh my God, I didn't work out today, Greg. Oh, like bad me. No, I have a different focus for today. Tomorrow, I will have 3 other different focuses. So we can do it all. We just can't do it all at once. Take off that superwoman cape and be focused. That's what you do have for the day.
And it's just like how I coach people. I just say, don't try to do 20 things in a day. Just pick a couple, 1 or 2, maybe 3, and things will come along. But those are the 2 things that you really want to focus on, because there's always stuff like I was doing taxes this morning. It wasn't really my plan to do taxes this morning, but it was one of those things. You got to do it, but it wasn't on my schedule of the things I wanted to do. But I'm focusing when I get all done with that. Focus right back on those 1 or 2, 3 things like you mentioned. And I'm so tracking with you right now because I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and then my parents are in their 80s. So I'm in mid area. So I got both
sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Right there
that,
with you.
and I waited too long to find my wife, which I finally did. But it was a good thing.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Appreciate that. But so, and that was awesome talking about that. Now we're talking about multiple things. And you kind of mentioned some of your stuff. And there you have multiple businesses going on. I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and you got more than 3 things going on, but it's a great 3 things or multiples. You want to share something about your Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center, and you call it a sanctuary of tranquility nestled in sun-drenched Southern California. And by the way, my wife is from mid California near the Oakland, up in that area. So she's near the Bay
Okay.
Area. So
Bay
I
Area.
have connections to California, just not Southern
Good.
California. But yeah, share with them about your wellness and retreat center, what you have going on with that.
Yes, and I think you mentioned it since I have three different things. This comes into branding and knowing who you are. So I do have the brand under the Dr. Karen Kramer, and I opened up the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center, which I'll come back to, and then also the book, Healthy Grief. So they are all threaded together, but knowing what the branding is to each one is slightly different. The Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center was opened August 2nd of 2022, and it was my intention to be able to create an environment, in this case specifically for women. So thank you, Greg, on that. When we are in a better place, including your wife, right? When we are in a better place, it then has a positive ripple effect to others, like the partners, spouses, everybody else, children, etc. And it actually is named because about 6 years ago, I had a vision of a villa, hence the name Villa Vision. And in that villa was a space where I was bringing together, and I have brought together various different holistic health practitioners. Let me say this, I am very good at the work that I do. I'm also very good at acknowledging that the way in which I help my clients is not necessarily the best for them. Sometimes the process I do, I may refer out to somebody else, or I may work with them and get them so far and then send out. In many cases, I can get them farther ahead with just the work I do, but I also try to assess and partner with other people, other holistic health practitioners, to be able to help them move forward. So think of it more like one of those services where you might come to a traditional life coach, traditional talk therapist, traditional medical professional, and the concierge then gives you an idea about taking more information, intake information, and being able to provide two or three different practitioners or services. So that is where the Villa vision is, and it is continuing to expand. So right now, this is the environment. We're actually adding on with 3.5 acres to continue to build. I have an esthetician, I have a massage therapist, I do retreats out of this home, I have an infrared sauna, we do have the large pool, the backyard. So it is all encased into this environment where I lead retreats and where I take one-on-one clients. So as I mentioned, when I'm doing the what I call the one-on-one VIP personalized retreats, they come, they stay on site with me for those 3 days to do the deep dive, to get away from life outside and to really take time for themselves and to integrate and to work through some of the deep unconscious and subconscious work. So that's a bit about the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center, as well as just a hint on what is to come as it continues to build out.
Well, that's great, and you made a good point. And as an agile coach, I coach corporate a lot, and I bring up sometimes where people like they expect you to know everything. So I'm so glad that you said that I'm not the be all end all for everyone in areas where I'll go in and said I know people that know everything things about automated testing or coaching or they're like grief counseling like we're just talking here. I'll be more than happy. It says when you get ready, if you're going to do something crazy in your corp, how about we go talk to Dr. Karen and maybe she can
Yes.
help you guide you through that process. But they sometimes they also point at me and says, well, why do I hire you if you're going to tell me because I'm smart enough to realize and give you advice on things that people may be better at it to get you more of what you want. Where if I were to be not humble enough, and I think it's really important to be humble as a coach and a mentor, to say that I can't answer everything, and that's not my job. And I think so many people get emotionally from a coaching perspective. Oh, I can't answer that. Oh my God, I'm failing. No, it's not. And I'm glad you said that because someone of your expertise, you know, if you need to have people come in and help with the particular need that your customer needs, don't be surprised that you don't need to do it also, and try not to be the answer or have the answer for every question your client comes up with. So I appreciate that very much because it's just it resonates with so many different things that people don't pick up on, right? And they just assume they need to have the answer for every question. And with that, I was going to say, this question is, what do you do to keep up the level of energy that you do all these things with? And how do you keep that energy level? I'm like, part of me want to say, well, do you take retreats to your own retreat every once in a while and just, mellow out a little bit and get your energy back up? Or what do you do to keep that energy level up that you have?
Routine, developing routines. So sleep routines are part of that. And actually, I work with an individual who does neurofeedback. So I was actually testing one of the units. Oh, I don't have it in here. I took it out of my office. Uh, the getting sleep routines, so getting the rest and knowing at night that we honestly do need to have our rest and restore, and really getting to the level of the brain waves that really help our body restore as well as our mind restore as well. So finding that time where you're getting to sleep around the same time at night, you have an evening routine. And I won't get into all those, like, turn off your electronics and all that different stuff. Yes, that does play into it, but honestly have that routine where, whether it's reading, taking baths, taking a shower, whatever, drinking tea, whatever it is that eases you into that sleep time, waking up around the same time in the morning. So I find that no matter what I do during the day, if I have a certain constant routine that helps me wind down at night and wind up in the morning, easing into the morning, like I already mentioned, my journal along with my cup of coffee in the morning, as part of my routine to get me started, that's something that helps me maintain my energy during the day. There's much more than that, but the very big thing is around having some form of routine around sleep.
And I totally agree with you. I do my 5 a.m. show. Let me get my label there. So I get up every day at 5 a.m. a little bit before 5 a.m. Some days it's a little less, but it's in that realm because I have my routine, right, and that gets me that energy level before everyone else does. With that, I wanted this some. How can people get a hold of you? What are the recommended ways of connecting with you if they want to connect in the future? Maybe hiring you out for your corporate retreats or something like that. Talk about that with all
Excellent.
this stuff going on.
I will answer that in the next minute because I have the other interview to jump into. So, yes, thank you, Greg. So, the quickest and easiest way to get a hold of me, yes, I do have a website at thevillavision.com. My main website is just drkarenkramer.com, DrKarenKramer. Same thing as you see my name that's on there without the dot in the middle of it. What you'll find there is there's going to be a button there about booking a call. That is the easiest way to get on my calendar. Free consultation. So whether it's about my book, masterclass, one-on-one, whatever it is, bouncing ideas off of me, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Also on that website, drkarenkramer.com, you're going to find a ribbon of information at the top. If you are interested in healthy grief at all, that page is going to take you to the book trailer and all the information behind healthy grief, including Jack Canfield's endorsement of the book as well. So there you go.
Well, thank you for that quick summary. I know you got to go, and I want to say I enjoyed this interview and learned so much from you, and look forward to maybe one day we'll actually do a meetup. I don't know. You're so busy
I'd
though.
love to.
We could share something
I
like
would
that.
love
Okay.
to.
All right. Well, take care, and thanks again.
Thank you again, Greg. Take care.